Preparing for a solutions consulting at PagerDuty interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 20 key questions you're likely to face. For each question you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. How would you discover a customer's incident management challenges before recommending PagerDuty? I begin with open questions about how incidents are detected, routed, escalated, resolved, and reviewed. Then I quantify impact through downtime, alert volume, response times, missed SLAs, and engineer hours. I interview operations, developers, security, and business stakeholders because each sees different friction. Finally, I summarize their priorities and validate them before mapping capabilities such as intelligent alerting, on-call scheduling, automation, and analytics. That keeps the recommendation outcome-driven rather than feature-led. While answering, focus on business outcomes, current workflows, incident volume, stakeholder interviews, operational pain, existing tools, measurable impact, and translating discovery findings into a relevant PagerDuty solution. Question 2. How would you explain PagerDuty's value to a non-technical executive? I would describe PagerDuty as an operations platform that helps the right people respond to critical problems quickly and consistently. Instead of discussing every feature, I would connect it to outcomes: fewer customer-impacting outages, faster restoration, clearer accountability, and better visibility for leaders. I would use the customer's baseline metrics to estimate value, such as reduced mean time to resolution. The message should be concise, quantified, and tied directly to business risk. Make sure to cover business language, customer impact, operational resilience, reduced downtime, faster response, governance, measurable ROI, and adapting the message to executive priorities rather than explaining product features in isolation. Question 3. Design a PagerDuty solution for a global ecommerce company with frequent, noisy alerts. I would first model critical services, dependencies, ownership, and regional coverage. Monitoring events would enter through integrations or APIs, then be normalized and grouped so one failure does not create hundreds of incidents. Service-specific escalation policies would page primary responders, secondary responders, and incident commanders across time zones. I would add automation for safe diagnostics and remediation, while dashboards track alert quality, acknowledgement, and restoration times. I would pilot the design on one revenue-critical service before scaling. In your answer, discuss event normalization, intelligent alert grouping, service ownership, escalation policies, schedules, noise reduction, automation, regional resilience, analytics, and validating the design against response time objectives. Question 4. How would you conduct a technical demo of PagerDuty for multiple stakeholders? I would tailor the demonstration to the audience and start by restating their operational challenges. For engineers, I would show event ingestion, routing, escalation, and integrations. For managers, I would emphasize visibility, analytics, governance, and outcomes. I would use one realistic incident journey instead of a disconnected feature tour, moving from detection through response and post-incident learning. I would rehearse the environment, prepare screenshots or recordings as backups, and end with agreed success criteria. Be sure to mention persona-based storytelling, discovery alignment, realistic workflows, live configuration, incident lifecycle, integrations, business outcomes, audience interaction, fallback plans, and reserving time for questions and next steps. Question 5. What questions would you ask when integrating PagerDuty with a customer's monitoring tools? I would ask which monitoring systems generate events, what payloads and severities they provide, and how services are identified. I would clarify authentication, network restrictions, routing requirements, expected event volume, deduplication behavior, and ownership rules. I would also ask what happens when the integration fails and whether audit or retention requirements apply. During implementation, I would test representative alerts, verify acknowledgements and resolutions, and document support procedures for operational teams. Focus on event sources, protocols, payloads, authentication, routing keys, deduplication, severity mapping, ownership, rate limits, failure handling, security requirements, and testing the complete integration path. Question 6. How would you explain the difference between an alert, an incident, and a notification in PagerDuty? An alert is a signal received from a monitoring or automation source. An incident is the actionable operational record created when that signal requires response, ownership, and lifecycle tracking. A notification is the message sent to responders through channels such as push, SMS, email, or phone. Multiple alerts can be grouped into one incident, preventing duplicate work. That distinction matters because good configuration turns raw telemetry into prioritized action rather than overwhelming engineers with noise. In your answer, distinguish monitoring signals from actionable incidents and delivery messages, explain deduplication and escalation, and connect each concept to reducing noise and preserving responder attention. Question 7. How would you handle a customer who says PagerDuty is too expensive? I would first understand what they are comparing: license price, implementation cost, or total operating expense. Then I would quantify current costs from downtime, inefficient escalations, manual coordination, and engineer interruption. I would connect PagerDuty capabilities to those costs and identify the highest value use case for an initial phase. If budget remains constrained, I would discuss scope and rollout options rather than immediately discounting. The goal is a credible value case supported by the customer's own numbers. Make sure to acknowledge the concern, uncover the comparison basis, quantify downtime and labor costs, clarify scope, demonstrate differentiated value, offer phased adoption, and avoid discounting before establishing business impact. Question 8. Describe how you would respond if a customer asks for a feature PagerDuty does not currently provide. I would clarify the business outcome behind the request and determine whether the need is functional, process-related, or caused by configuration. I would be transparent if the capability is unavailable, then demonstrate supported alternatives, integrations, APIs, or workflow changes that may solve the underlying problem. I would not promise roadmap delivery. I would document the use case, communicate it internally, and follow up with a realistic recommendation. Trust is more valuable than pretending every request is supported. Discuss clarifying the underlying need, being transparent about product limits, exploring supported alternatives, assessing roadmap relevance, documenting feedback, avoiding overpromising, and maintaining trust throughout the conversation. Question 9. How would you design an on-call model for a customer operating across multiple time zones? I would map critical services to accountable teams and establish regional schedules with explicit handoff times. Each schedule would include primary and secondary layers, escalation to an incident commander or specialized team, and documented holiday and absence procedures. I would test coverage using simulated incidents and review schedule analytics for missed acknowledgements or repeated overrides. I would also consider fatigue by limiting excessive pages and improving alert quality. The design should provide dependable coverage without creating unsustainable on-call pressure. Cover service ownership, follow the sun coverage, schedules, overrides, escalation layers, holidays, handoffs, fatigue management, coverage testing, and measuring whether the model meets response objectives. Question 10. What is your approach to demonstrating PagerDuty automation to a skeptical engineering team? I would begin with a repetitive, low-risk task such as collecting diagnostics or restarting a stateless process. I would explain the trigger, permissions, safeguards, approval points, logs, and rollback path before running it. The workflow should be idempotent and produce an audit trail. I would compare manual effort, execution time, and error risk against the automated path. Starting small builds credibility. Once the team trusts the controls, we can expand automation to higher value remediation. Be sure to discuss safety, approvals, least privilege, ID impotency, auditability, rollback, measurable toil reduction, starting with low-risk workflows, and proving automation through controlled demonstrations. Question 11. How would you measure the success of a PagerDuty implementation? I would establish a baseline before deployment, including alert volume, acknowledgement time, restoration time, escalation frequency, and customer impacting incidents. After rollout, I would track trends by service and team rather than relying on one average. I would also measure adoption, alert quality, automation usage, and post-incident action completion. Success means measurable operational improvement, not merely activated accounts. I would review results with stakeholders and adjust routing, ownership, or workflows based on the evidence. Focus on baseline metrics: mean time to acknowledge, mean time to resolve, alert noise, escalation effectiveness, uptime, automation, customer impact, adoption, and reviewing results against agreed success criteria. Question 12. How would you address security and compliance requirements during a PagerDuty sales cycle? I would identify security, privacy, identity, and data residency requirements early rather than waiting for procurement. I would explain relevant controls such as SSO, role-based access, provisioning, auditability, encryption, and integration permissions, using approved documentation. For detailed questions, I would involve PagerDuty security or legal specialists and avoid making assumptions. I would map data flows and retention expectations to the customer's policies, then track open items transparently through the technical validation and vendor review. Mention early security discovery, data flows, access controls, SSO, SIM, audit logs, encryption, regional requirements, vendor review, documentation, and involving security specialists without making unsupported claims. Question 13. Tell me about a time you influenced a customer without having direct authority. In one engagement, the operations team wanted a broad rollout while engineering preferred postponing it. I facilitated a workshop that separated urgent reliability risks from lower priority requests. We agreed to pilot one critical service, define response time and noise reduction targets, and review results after 2 weeks. The pilot reduced duplicate pages and gave engineering evidence rather than pressure. Both groups supported expansion afterward. I learned that influence comes from creating shared criteria and making the next decision low risk. Use a structured example with context, competing priorities, discovery, evidence, stakeholder alignment, influence tactics, measurable result, and reflection on what you would improve. Question 14. How would you manage a proof of concept for PagerDuty? I would define the business and technical hypothesis first, such as reducing duplicate alerts and improving acknowledgement time for 2 critical services. Then I would identify owners, integrations, data access, milestones, and decision criteria. The proof of concept should use realistic incidents, not a polished toy environment. I would hold checkpoints, document blockers, and measure results against the baseline. Before completion, I would agree on production architecture, ownership, training, and the commercial next step. Discuss success criteria, scope, stakeholders, timeline, representative services, integration testing, adoption measures, risks, documented outcomes, executive alignment, and a clear path from technical validation to production. Question 15. How would you troubleshoot a PagerDuty integration that is not creating incidents? I would isolate the path systematically, confirm the source generated an event, inspect the destination endpoint, verify the routing key or credentials, and review the HTTP response. Next, I would validate payload structure, service mapping, severity, deduplication fields, and timestamps. I would check integration logs, rate limits, and whether the event created an alert or was suppressed. Finally, I would send a controlled test event and document the root cause, correction, and prevention step. Cover source verification, endpoint and routing key checks, authentication, payload validity, timestamps, severity, service mapping, logs, API responses, rate limits, controlled tests, and escalation when evidence supports it. Question 16. How would you explain incident response roles and coordination to a customer? I explain that technical recovery and coordination are separate responsibilities. An incident commander drives priorities, decisions, and escalation. A technical lead investigates and restores service. A communications lead manages internal and external updates. Subject matter experts contribute focused expertise without everyone taking over coordination. I establish an incident channel, update cadence, decision log, and handoff rules. Clear roles reduce duplicated effort and protect engineers from stakeholder interruptions while keeping leaders informed. Mention incident commander, technical lead, communications lead, subject matter experts, clear decision rights, stakeholder updates, timelines, handoffs, documentation, and avoiding role confusion during high-severity events. Question 17. What would you include in a post-incident review using PagerDuty data? I would reconstruct the timeline from detection through resolution, including alert quality, acknowledgement, escalations, responder actions, communications, and customer impact. I would ask which signals were useful, which created noise, and where ownership or documentation failed. The review should remain blameless and focus on system conditions. Each improvement needs an owner, priority, and due date, such as tuning a monitor, updating a runbook, or automating diagnostics. PagerDuty Analytics can verify whether changes improve future outcomes. Focus on blameless analysis, timeline reconstruction, detection quality, response actions, escalation performance, customer impact, contributing factors, learning, ownership, and tracking corrective actions to completion. Question 18. How would you compare PagerDuty with a competing incident management platform? I would begin with the customer's decision criteria instead of presenting a generic feature matrix. I would compare alert orchestration, on-call management, integrations, automation, analytics, governance, security, usability, implementation effort, and total cost. I would demonstrate the workflows most relevant to their environment and acknowledge legitimate competitor strengths. The recommendation should be evidence-based, tied to measurable outcomes and risks. Honest comparison builds credibility and helps the customer choose the platform that fits its operating model. Be sure to compare customer requirements, incident lifecycle, integrations, automation, analytics, usability, scalability, security, ecosystem, implementation effort, total cost, and evidence rather than relying on generic competitor claims. Question 19. How would you collaborate with account executives, customer success, product, and engineering during an opportunity? I would align with the account executive on objectives, stakeholders, qualification, timeline, and next steps before customer meetings. I would capture technical requirements and risks in shared notes, involve product or engineering only when their expertise is needed, and keep the customer informed about ownership. For implementation handoff, I would document architecture, integrations, success criteria, and unresolved concerns. Regular internal checkpoints prevent contradictory messages and make the customer experience feel coordinated rather than departmental. Discuss role clarity, shared notes, discovery alignment, technical qualification, mutual action plans, escalation paths, feedback loops, handoff quality, and protecting customer trust through consistent communication. Question 20. Why do you want to become a solutions consultant at PagerDuty? I am drawn to solutions consulting because it combines technical problem solving with customer impact. PagerDuty operates where reliability, automation, and human coordination directly affect businesses and their users, which makes the work meaningful. I enjoy discovering how teams operate, simplifying complex systems, and building practical recommendations that earn technical and executive confidence. My strengths in communication, architecture, and collaboration would help customers improve incident response while helping PagerDuty grow through credible, outcome-focused partnerships. Connect your technical curiosity, consultative discovery, communication, reliability mindset, customer empathy, interest in PagerDuty's mission, and examples showing you can translate complex technology into business value. If you are still with us, congratulations, you are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.